They have that adage about people who fail to study history are condemned to repeat it.
Yeah.
There's a reason that public health laws for vaccination were created. And we're about to rediscover why those laws were created, and it's to protect the general public. The reason that there are laws about MMR and tetanus and other sort of transmissible infections, diphtheria, whooping cough, those types of things, is because in the case, especially let's just take measles, extraordinarily contagious. And that's how you get kind of an explosive epidemic, which we saw in West Texas not too long ago, and we are going to see in Florida if this moves forward the way it is.
Alrighty, welcome in Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon and
David Person.
How are you, David?
I love it, man. This is my time of year. I know it's not your time of year, but I love this. The cool nights, the cool mornings. This is my time of year, man. I love it. The look of just sheer disgust on your face.
Yeah, pumpkin spice and coolness, my ass. No.
No, I didn't say I was with the pumpkin spice. No, I didn't say I was with that.
I'm just talking about this time of year. This time of year. It's listen, fall is fine. Fall is fine. It's not bad. It's the January, February that gets me, and I know that fall is what leads to the January, February. Dark at 4:30, cold all the time, dreary looking.
True,
I can't have, I'm going to have to find somewhere to go during those months, somewhere warm and sunny. But this is, we're not bad. We're not bad. We're in the 90s here in the next few days. Hopefully it'll stay that way through Christmas. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I said it, and I'm not taking it back. I want it through Christmas. Hey, before we get started though on this thing, we need to tell you about our friends over at Wind Creek Entertainment. They sponsor this show, and we really appreciate the work that they do and everything that they've done to sponsor us and keep the show moving along. They are the state's #1 hospitality employers. They are one of the largest employers of Alabamians in the state. They help a lot of folks pay the bills around here, and they contribute a lot to our society and to the betterment of the state. And we really appreciate them for all that. If you're headed down to Auburn, started playing ball games, and if you're coming from anywhere north of Montgomery, then let me tell you, there's a good spot. You're going to end up staying somewhere. Most people aren't going to pay the prices over in Auburn. There's not a whole lot of hotel selections over there. So you're not wanting to pay them. You're going to stay in Montgomery anyway. You're going to stay in that area. Go to Wetumpka. Stay at the nice resort at Wind Creek. Go down,
nice.
Hang out in the sports book. I'm telling you, man, you will not regret it. It is a super, super nice place. If you're headed to the beach, you've got, I know we have fall break coming up here in a few weeks, and for the kids, and everybody's going to head to the beach, and we've got some time on the weekends when the weather's still nice and going to be good, warm and sunny all the way through October. Stop and break up that trip in Atmore. There's no reason. Listen, you head down, you can stay in the weekend, you head down, you stay in Atmore on a Friday night, you break it up a little bit, you have a nice time, go to the spa, go to hang out at the pool, play some games, everybody eats a nice dinner. You will not regret it. Go and do it. It's Wind Creek Entertainment. Look them up online, book you a stay, and enjoy yourself.
Yes,
all right. There are several things. We have kind of a smorgasbord type deal going on here, because there's no real major thing that is going on. I mean, there's always a major thing as long as Trump is in office, because we're slowly losing democracy. But
Jesus.
I mean, it's every day something, and the Supreme Court. Listen, we didn't talk about this in the little pre-show thing that we just did right there, but I did want to bring this up because I find this to be probably the most atrocious thing that happened this week, and that is the Supreme Court of our United States, as long as we can keep it, ruled this week that ICE can continue arresting people. Now, listen, I saw Justice Sotomayor on the Colbert Show talking about this, and they're arresting these folks. They're detaining these people based on 3 factors. Okay. And this is the 3 factors. And you tell me whether or not this is the America that you would like to live in. They are detaining people based upon what they look like, their heritage, whether or not they believe them to be Hispanic, the language that they're speaking, whether or not they are speaking Spanish, and the jobs that they are performing, which they classified as typically low-wage, low-paying jobs that immigrants usually work. That's the reasoning for detaining people that they're having, not a reasonable suspicion of a crime. No.
Yeah.
That these people may be here illegally because they have these factors.
Right. Right. Right.
No.
Yeah, it's outrageous, man.
Yeah.
It's outrageous. And I know we're going to get into this conversation with our friend, the mayor of Montgomery, Steven Reed, here in a little bit. But, it goes to this whole idea of selective enforcement and selective application of the definition of crime. And it also goes to, as you're suggesting, just the outright discriminatory assumptions that are made about people based on race, culture, and occupation. I mean, all of that is patently un-American. But then the emphasis and the energy and the resources that they're placing there. And meanwhile, we're letting people skip and ignoring, almost celebrating in some cases, white-collar crime. This Epstein fiasco is really, I think, beginning to highlight even more the hellish, demonic, I would even say, or evil, if you prefer that word, intricacies of human trafficking, where you're not just talking about rich and powerful people or people with resources, basically making, young women in particular sex slaves, but the financing of it, where J.P. Morgan comes into play with all of that. You start to realize that J.P. Morgan, it appears, I think it's fair to say, based on the reporting, J.P. Morgan appears to have been an enabler of Jeffrey Epstein. But yet we ignore all of this kind of stuff. We ignore all of this. Let people skate on all of that. And instead we're targeting people at the lowest end of the social economic ladder for criminal indictments and prosecutions and deportment. And all they're doing is trying to make a living, and they're paying taxes, and they're doing work that many Americans, and at least in many cases anyway, many Americans don't even want to do.
No,
it's just insane.
Well, let's be honest, David, and let's we beat around the bush a lot of this when it comes to Trump, and we tend to, I think, a lot of the times a big problem that we have on the left and among progressives is we seek to see the best in people. And so we're very easily moved off of believing that people are doing things for evil reasons or for reasons that are uncomfortable to talk about, such as racism and hate. And let's be honest, this is the reason why Trump is elected. Okay, this is the reason why Trump still has the support that he enjoys from people. Because, and I wrote this in a column this week. The things that the president used to say mattered. His actions used to matter to people. Okay, the idea that a president could do a tiny 5% of the stuff that Trump does on just a routine basis 15 years ago would have you would have never in a million years would you have thought it. Never, ever would you have ever thought this could have been the case. And not in this country. Not, the standard to which we held Barack Obama. Trump couldn't breathe at that standard. Okay. Now, even the standard that we held George W. Bush to, the standard that we held, I thought that George W. Bush, legitimately thought that George W. Bush would go down as the dumbest, most incompetent president of my lifetime. I really thought that there's no way that we'll go back to this idea of the president needs to be a good old boy you can have a beer with, that we have recognized after George W. Bush's disastrous presidency. And it was a disaster. It was a disaster all the way around, where he just absolutely fumbled this cohesive country like we had never enjoyed in 20 years, when after 9/11, and then turned it into the worst economic disaster of our lifetimes that President Obama inherited and then fixed. But I thought that was going to be it. And even we held to a higher standard, because now what he looked like is a freaking genius and a statesman compared to what we have in the White House today. And And here's what bugs me the most, though, about it is that Donald Trump was elected. This is what we were told, okay, because of the economy. All right. And because Joe Biden was unfit and mentally, and because Kamala Harris was appointed and not nominated through the convention as normal, as it would normally take place. So those are the reasons. He was going to fix this economy situation, and he was going to fix these war situations, and he was going to do these things and fix this border situation that was doing whatever. He's done none of it, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can make an argument for the border if this is the way you want that to be.
Yeah.
If this is the life that you want to lead, with mass men coming around and basically renditioning U.S. citizens out to parts unknown, and that's what's taking place right now, and doing so under this with no probable cause, with no reasoning for arresting people outside of what the Supreme Court just said, and the idea that would be okay in this country is astonishing to me. But other than that, are your prices lower for anything? Has the price come down? Because they were going to come down on day one. I heard this over and over and over. Day one, those prices were coming down. Have those tariffs returned any manufacturing jobs to America, or have they only returned uncertainty and just nonsense? They haven't, because we recently got jobs reports for the past year that showed that not only have they not turned it around, they've lost 48,000 manufacturing jobs since Trump's been in office. So we're going the opposite direction. We're not building manufacturing. We're losing.
And those are job reports from his administration.
Yeah, those are the doctored jobs reports. God knows what they really are. I mean, we only had 20,000 jobs or so gained last month, and that was the new doctored jobs report. When the revisions come out in a few years, when that actual competent person gets in there, we're going to find out we lost 150,000 jobs. But it's just. So none of this stuff is working. None of it's doing anything. In the meantime, we have this whole Epstein situation going on. We know this man is in those files. We know that this man was doing some pretty shady stuff. And I'm pretty sure that there's probably some portions in there that's going to put him on a table somewhere and getting one of those massages. So we know that there's some stuff going on. And on top of that, we have all of this other evidence. I mean, they had the picture of the drawing where he suddenly doesn't know, is that my signature? I mean, come on, and then the giant check for the depreciated woman with his name on it. And listen, I can certainly buy that probably isn't the way Donald Trump signed that thing. It was probably the way that they signed it down there as a joke for the party that they were all part of. And this was all one big joke. And Donald Trump was in on it because that's his pal, Jeffrey, that they used to hang out and go to the island with.
That's right. That's right.
All of this is going on. Here's the point, though. All of this is taking place. All of this nonsense is going on. None of the good stuff is happening to anybody. If you're a poor person or a working person in this country, your life has not improved at all. As a matter of fact, it's getting exponentially worse, because while all this is taking place, they have rolled back. You remember that when Joe Biden put in the protections for folks that prevented credit card companies from charging outrageous fees on things? Well, that's been rolled back. That's been done away with. Remember when they put in the protections that prevented banks from overcharging you for overdraft protection? Remember that? Where we had a cap? Yeah, that's gone. That's gone as well. They'll be able to click to cancel to get out of subscriptions on things where it's supposed to make it as easy to cancel something as it was to sign up for it in the first place. Gone. That's gone as well.
So
all that's gone, and he enjoys this. So what's left, David? What's left?
Yeah, and and that's the point I was going to make. And it's why I commend your column to everybody who's listening. If they haven't read your column, they need to read it, because it's a very cogent argument that makes the point, which I think is where you were going, that what's left is hate and fear. People are willing, it's very clear that in MAGA America, they would rather have their hate and fear stoked and assuaged in a way that highlights or supports their biases and their bigotries than they would to save money, to benefit financially and economically, and to do right by their fellow man. They'd rather have injustice prevail You know, they'd rather suffer under tariffs and high prices and unpromised or unkept promises. They'd rather go through all of that simply because this guy caters to their hate or their fear. That was the point of your column. I wish everybody listening would read it and share it.
Well, I appreciate that, and but I do as well, because I listen. That is all that's left right now. As a matter of fact, when I posted this thing on my Facebook page, there were some comments down below it. One of them by someone who I went to high school with, that said, that I noticed that you're not talking about the woman killed on the bus in North Carolina or the doctor killed over in Auburn, the veterinarian, both of which are very tragic situations. And of course, absolutely abhorrent. I mean, it's just unimaginable tragedy for those folks and their families and what happened. And those people should absolutely be punished to the fullest extent of the law, whatever it is. And I mean, it's terrible, absolutely terrible. But that goes back to your point. Where, well, I know you shouldn't talk because it doesn't fit your BS narrative, is what the person said. Your BS narrative. My BS narrative? I mean, this, you have now wanted me to talk about this simply because these were black men killing white women. That's why you wanted to talk about it. That's the only reason. Now, let's forget the fact that most white women are killed by white men. The overwhelming majority of white women who get killed are killed by white men. Okay?
Yeah.
Mostly white men they know.
The overwhelming majority of white people are killed by white people.
That's exactly right.
Just like the overwhelming majority of black people are killed by black people.
Yes, because
murder is about proximity.
Yeah, well, that, and also most murders are about things that happen in your daily life, not random events, not random occurrences, not things like that. Although I would also make the argument that most random murders are probably carried out by white people, since that's what all the serial killers and mass shooters are for the most part. But we don't. That didn't fit his narrative, because that's what he's been seeing every day and taking in through his news sources every day, over and over and over, to stoke that fear of the dangerous black men, of the dangerous black folks. And also the military is going into Chicago because I know why. That's what he said. You know why it's necessary. Well, because of course there are scary black people who live in Chicago, where there's gang violence and things that take place. But that's the narrative, that is why Donald Trump still enjoys the support that he does, because that's what he brings out in people. That's what he's fostered. That's what he's pushed. That's what his entire being is about as president of the United States. It is to sow division and hate and to make people fearful of folks who don't look like them, who don't talk like them, who perform jobs that they are not doing. That is who Donald Trump is, and that's what he's brought out in people, and that's why he still enjoys the support that he does among a group of ignorant people.
That's right. Is
there anything else that we need to talk about, or should we get out of here on that rant?
Man, I'd say let's get out, because, we've got some great interviews coming up.
That's right. We do. We got two good ones. We got Mayor Steven Reed going to come in and talk about things that are happening at the national level that are impacting cities around the country, including his. And we're going to talk to Dr. Michael Saag, world-renowned professor at UAB, who has been worked in the area of immunizations and just working on a number of different things, and was really a part of on the front line with the folks that developed the COVID vaccine, and he's going to talk about vaccines, how they work, what goes into the mRNA vaccine, why people should stop being so fearful of it, and address some of the just scary aspects of having a complete and utter imbecile as the director of health for this country. So, all right, let's slide out. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. We're back in a minute. Alrighty, welcome in. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy, as always, when our favorite mayor, and I apologize to all the other mayors who may join us at some point, My
All the
favorite
other
mayor,
mayors.
our mayor Steven Reed, is the Montgomery mayor is with us now, and Mayor, we appreciate you coming on and spending some time as always to talk about some of this stuff that impacts the cities around our state and especially our capital city.
No, thank you guys. Really appreciate work you do and giving me the opportunity to talk about some things that are true and some things that are not so true that are out there in the social media space. So, and then just the political space. So I'm always interested to talk about whatever we need to share about what's happening in the city of Montgomery and what we're doing even beyond that.
Sure. I think one of the things that both David and I wanted to bring up with you is something that is impacting, could impact Montgomery, has impacted some other cities around the country, and there has obviously been some threats from some folks about the occupation, essentially by the U.S. military of different cities, as a crime crackdown. I guess I know there was a task force that was put in place in Montgomery that got resources together from all across the state and to address crime that has been fairly successful in doing exactly what you wanted to do. But that's wholly different than what's taking place in D.C. right now, what's being threatened in Chicago, and what's being threatened by, let's be honest, by Reed Ingram and the bill that he has that would allow the AG and the governor to appoint a police chief, and if crime went above a certain rate or whatever. So I guess if you would just kind of talk about all of that and where you kind of see things and what do you see, if that's helpful in your eyes, if it's hurtful, where do you see things?
Well, I always thought Republicans believed in local control and home rule.
Right. Well,
That's what I used to hear.
Well,
just say, kind of what you used to hear back when it was convenient.
Uh-huh.
And now that's not obviously the case. I think there's a lot to unpack there around public safety. I think we've got to look at this for what it is. I think we got to look at this as a diversion from the Trump administration's failed policies on the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Trump said that groceries would be lower, healthcare would be lower, there'd be more jobs. None of those things are true.
Mm-hmm.
1 year after the election, and none of those things seem to be true or going in the right direction when you look at how things have come since his inauguration. Now, I guess if you work for the Trump family, you made a lot of money. If you work for those businesses, that's work for you. But it's not working for everyday Americans, and surely not everyday Alabamians. So I think, this is kind of a smoke and mirrors tactic of we're going to talk about crime that was already trending down, that mayors across this country were already working with their community leaders to trend in the right direction by doing the things that started under the Biden administration, which is funding community violence initiatives, funding mental health initiatives, funding those programs that are on the front side of crime as opposed to the reactive side of crime. But we know for a long time, the GOP has used crime as a wedge issue. And that's unfortunate because crime impacts each and every one of us. I've been the victim of it. My family has been the victim of it. Those things happen, friends and church members alike. But you don't overreach when you don't have to. And by bringing in the National Guard into cities and threatening that really points more to a strongman autocracy type of approach than it does a democratic republic approach of working with governments at various levels to fix the issues that citizens want to be addressed. We all want to see crime reduced. We all want to see crime lowered. There are proven ways over the last several years to do that. Offices of Violence Prevention, other initiatives working with faith-based organizations, making sure people have an opportunity to get a job so they don't rob, making sure people have an opportunity to stay involved in educational practices to help them get that economic step that they need, the economic opportunity they're looking for, without feeling like they have to revert to means of violence or anything else to get that done. And I think what this Trump administration has done has been to polarize Americans, polarize urban versus rural, polarize people, whether it's for immigration crackdowns and forcefully removing people from this country for other reasons that I think were clearly laid out in Project 2025, or whether it is to now send in National Guard into major cities on domestic soil to do things they are not trained to do, which is to fight crime. That's
Right.
a problem. It's a
Right.
bad sign, and it's a bad approach to have coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's what this is being used for.
Yeah, when we discussed it a little bit, the National Guard occupation of D.C. and stuff, and the thing that I said and I believe, and I just want to get your take as well, is there's going to be a reduction in crime in the short term in D.C. I mean, you've got National Guard roaming the street, all the time. I mean, there's people out there that they're running people left and right, but those people are not going to be there forever. And then when they leave, you've addressed none of the underlying causes that reduce, that have caused crime. And so it's really kind of a smoke and mirrors type thing where it's this real tough guy routine from that allows Trump to say, well, it's down. They say only 87%, but we know it's more than that. And listen, it's maybe a man gets into a little fight with his wife, and it's which somebody pointed out, hey, that accounts for 25% of violent crimes, by the way.
Yes,
So
sir.
maybe we should count for that. But, so it seems like they're not solving any of the underlying issues, right?
No, they aren't. And I don't think I don't think that's their interest, right? I think, again, their interest is to use someone's pain as a political issue, which is unfortunate, and which is something that should not be done when people are trying to come up with solutions to make their neighborhoods, communities, and cities safer through means that we have found to be working, be effective. When you're using crime for political theater to take away from the things that your administration has not done or is not doing, not addressing affordability and the cost of living, the cost of groceries, gas, utilities, things that are impacting the average American family, nor improving where their wages are and their opportunities to move up in life, then you want to divert their attention to the issue of public safety, to the issue of crime, and then categorize that as something that you're tough and you're strong on, because what you pledged and promised to your voters and to other Americans was to improve the economy is not happening.
Yeah. This whole conversation about crime has always been interesting to me because I've often wondered, Mr. Mayor, about the selective nature of what we define as crime. So let's take something like human trafficking, okay? We talk about violent crimes, and of course, violence is something we should be concerned about. Don't want to diminish that at all. But we also know that human trafficking takes a real toll on families and communities and young women in particular, but also some young men. Let's look at the states that at least one source that I found ranks in terms of having the highest rates of human trafficking. Number one on the list is Nevada. Is Nevada a red state or a blue state?
Red state.
Okay. Number two is Georgia. What would we say Georgia is?
Red state.
Number three is Mississippi. What would we say Mississippi is?
Red state.
I think you get my point. So the top 10 states, of the top 10 states, according to this one website, which is run by a law firm that specializes in human trafficking, just taking a cursory look at it, it looks to me as though out of the top 10 states that have the highest rate of human trafficking per 100,000 residents, there's only one state on this whole of the top 10 that is indisputably blue, and that's California. The rest, Oregon, South Dakota, New Mexico. I don't know if New Mexico may be purple. I don't know. Florida, Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, Georgia, Nevada. I mean, there seems to be a very hypocritical, selective way of looking at crime. Would you? And I'm assuming you agree with that.
Well, no question, and I think that's been the case again. They don't talk about white collar crime. I wonder why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Those things that impact, people's businesses, impact their financial well-being, those things aren't discussed as much. When they're talking about crime, they don't talk about the very loose gun laws, which you and I have talked about, and Josh on this in this discussion before, right? So those things aren't discussed. And it takes a Gavin Newsom, governor of California, to highlight some of this hypocrisy you just mentioned, to say, well, what crimes are we talking about? And is it just a certain type of crime? Is it just in certain places, again, that bodes well for political distraction, but that doesn't bode well as much for true change and true effectiveness and positive change in these various communities. So
Exactly.
human trafficking is not a focus because that's not a political wedge issue for the administration to use to keep Americans divided. And it's not something that can be used much for scoring political points, as is the case when you highlight one illegal immigrant who may have committed a crime or one person with mental health issues that may have committed a crime in another place. Those
Yeah.
become the talking points for many on the right, and certainly those in the podcast space and in the right, and certainly the conservative media space overall.
Yeah, and let's also add that human trafficking is particularly relevant in this particular news cycle because of the president's connection with the late Jeffrey Epstein. But
But
as
he
we
said
like
that
to
wasn't
say,
he said that wasn't his
I
signature on
digress.
that.
Yeah.
It just looked very much like his signature.
Right,
And it's not
right,
him in
right.
all the photos either.
Yeah,
That's,
I
Right,
guess
right,
not.
right. And he also said that wasn't his language, whatever that means, in terms of the verbiage he used on that card. Let me ask you one other question, Mr. Mayor.
In his defense, everything was spelled appropriately, so it may not have been his language.
So that's funny, Josh. Let me ask you one other thing here, Mr. Mayor. The rankings of violent crime per 1,000 residents in the state of Alabama has Montgomery as the fourth most violent city. Birmingham, number one, Bessemer, number two, Mobile, then Montgomery. It's saying that the violent crime rate for Birmingham is 14.2. Incidents per 1,000 residents, Montgomery 10.9 incidents of violent crime per 1,000 residents. I don't know if that lines up with. Oh, does that line up with what you guys know as well?
Well, I haven't looked at it per 1,000, but unlike, some on the other side, I'm not going to fire you because you gave me the bad statistics.
Right,
Davidson,
I
you can
got
still
you.
keep your job,
Right,
and I'm not going to say that your statistics are false because I don't agree with them.
right. I hear you.
Yeah, I think if those are the numbers, then again, it just fortifies the fact that what we know we have to do to drive down violent crime by investing in community centers, investing in public education, making
Right.
sure that wraparound services are provided, and we can get people off the crime track and onto the right track with various programs are needed now more than ever. So I take those numbers at face value, and that's what it shows
Sure.
us. Then it just backs up again why we need the resources that, oh, by the way, this Trump administration has cut. So when you talk about, how people look at different things, when you defund initiative to bring down violence through the Justice Department, you're defunding the police no different than anyone else that you're saying is
Great
defunding the
point.
police. And that's what
That's
this
a great
administration
point.
has done by cutting out grants and funding for offices of violence prevention and community violence intervention to help drive down those numbers that you just cited.
That's a great point, and I hope somebody from the DNC takes that down as a talking point. That's a great point. What I wanted to ask you is, the president and his people have taken a shot at Randall Woodfin in Birmingham about the crime rate, but they've said nothing about Bessemer, nothing about Mobile, nothing about Montgomery. Doesn't that, at least to my mind, that speaks to, again, the hypocrisy and sort of the faulty logic that they use again to try to justify what they're doing, even though I would argue they're probably, if they're going to attack Birmingham, I guess they'll probably try to come at Montgomery, though maybe they won't, since we've got a Republican governor, a Republican legislature. Maybe they'll skip over Montgomery. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
There's no rhyme or reason to the tactics that the administration uses when it comes to crime and how this is being deployed. Again, I think the part here that should offend every American is the fact that the military is being used by this president as a private security force. The politicization of the military, including our National Guard, should offend every veteran. It should offend every active member and everyone who supports our military in this country. That's not how the military should be used, not how it was designed to be used whatsoever. And I think that whether they come for Birmingham or if Montgomery's next, we're prepared to deal with whatever comes our way. And from my standpoint, we're always going to do what's in the best interest of the citizens of Montgomery. And I'm going to stand on that from now until I'm out of office because that's what's important for me. We'll call out the state government where need be. We'll call out the federal government where need be. And we'll accept responsibility at the local level as well. But I think that singling out cities for problems without coming up with a solution doesn't help anyone. And it just goes along with the age-old axiom that if you don't have a solution, don't tell me about the problem.
Yeah. One other quick thing. Tommy Tuberville has said that if he becomes the next governor, he would absolutely use the National Guard. I assume Birmingham would be his first target. What would your position be if not the president, but the governor says, we're gonna let the National Guard come in and patrol the streets or certain neighborhoods in Montgomery? What would your position be?
My position would be to discourage them from doing that, quite frankly. I don't think that does any good for the city or the citizens. Again, we've got members of our National Guard that are on our police force. We got members of our National Guard that work for the city of Montgomery and other departments. So we know a lot of the folks that are part of the National Guard and what their duties are and what they aren't. They're not trained or equipped to do the things necessary, and we shouldn't ask them to do those things, not what they signed up for. So, my thought would be to discourage it and to say if you want to reduce crime, then again, let's invest in education. Let's really invest in after-school programs and community initiatives. Let's invest in things that prevent the violence in the first place, not respond to them after someone has already been harmed by them. Let's leverage the state's resources and the state's innovation to use best practices to address those issues and maybe some of the things that we're seeing policy-wise in other states so that we don't have to feel the need to have armed military men and women roaming the streets of any of our cities in the state of Alabama, much less the nation itself.
Yeah, I know we're up against it, but I wanted to ask one more thing to get before we let you go. A lot of this stuff is the national politics now. It continues to filter down into the local stuff, and it makes it I have to imagine more difficult because, as we have said here, while we're not doing the things on the front end to address a lot of the crime, it's because those things aren't really sexy. The payoff comes 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road, and so I wonder, does the rhetoric now and the reactionary mindset of a lot of people where, we basically have an NFL mindset where everything is week to week to week to week. And there's no baseball, there's no 162 game mindset of things, to put it in, to use Tommy Tuberville's language, I guess, and put it in sports metaphors. But does that make it more difficult to do things like gain funding for community centers, gain funding for these programs, partnership up with different people and do the stuff that's going to result in long-term? Is it more difficult to make people see this, especially folks on the right?
No question. It's infinitely more difficult. We've been told the last couple of years by the leading consumer behavior companies, firms, and everyone else that, the way people consume information now is so different than even 10 years ago, much less 20, that what is national is local. And so when you wake up and you see something on Fox and Friends, that becomes the narrative for, what's happening right here. When the president says, well, we don't agree with the crime statistics that report to his FBI the last time I checked and come out of his FBI,
that's right,
then no one wants to believe statistics that doesn't fit their narrative. So when you're talking about getting support for these things, it's very hard for policymakers to justify, particularly those in Alabama, why they should do some of the things that will have long-term benefit, not only for the cities, but the regions that depend on those cities, which is very important for us to keep in mind, regardless if you live in Target County, Elmore County, or Clanton, or Butler, Crenshaw County, some of those places, you're depending on Montgomery in central Alabama. Just like in Birmingham, those surrounding counties, rural areas are depending on that urban hub to push out those jobs and to create. But the policies don't reflect that because it is so much red meat policy that's being put out there. So again, whether it's the governor and attorney general picking the police chief, has no business even being considered, much less filed. And it's not something that's effective because the governor nor the attorney general knows what's happening on the ground any more than any mayor does in their community because they're closest to the issue. So the national headwinds make it much more difficult to come up with common sense solutions that would work at the state and local level because of what the pushback might be for those that are on the right and those that may see things a little bit differently than they do about compromise. That's become a dirty word in today's politics, and that's unfortunate because I think that's why so many things don't get done anymore.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about that and about all of it, and hopefully there'll be a break at some point from this lunacy that we're living in. But Mayor, thank you so much for the work you do and for joining us and kind of explaining things at the ground level, so maybe people can better understand exactly what's happening and how this does affect people and what the options are, and how things are really working on the ground. But thank you, that's Mayor Steven Reed. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you, Josh. Thanks, David. And Josh, it's all sports
All right.
right. I got to
Good
ask
to
you,
see you.
is Kalen DeBoer's seat a little warmer now, or
Yeah,
is it still hot?
Yeah, I think it's hot. I think it's hot.
Okay.
I think it's going to stay hot until he gets he gets a nice win somewhere down the road. He's got to beat somebody, man. He's got to beat somebody and restore some faith. But otherwise, right up the road, man. Hugh Freeze, right up the road, doing getting it done,
That's
so
right.
far. All right.
I agree.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care, Mayor.
guys.
All righty.
All right.
As Mayor Steven Reed. Hey, we're going to slide out. We're going to come back in just a minute and get to Dr. Michael Sagg. Will join us and talk about vaccines. We're going to talk about vaccines. I know it's another dirty word. And we're going to talk about the actual reality of vaccines. How about that? All right. Back in a minute. Alabama Politics This Week. All righty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy now. We have we've missed this man. We used to have Dr. Michael Sagg on. He's a professor emeritus at UAB for infectious diseases, and really, he's so much more than that. And really, you should just Google Michael Sagg and look at all the things he's done, and you'll understand a little bit about what we're saying here. But we used to have him on back during the COVID pandemic when it was at its height, and he gave everybody great information and explained things. And, and I was hopeful that at the time we would never have to have him back on again because people would just, say, hey, man, look at those doctors and how great they did and all. But little did I know that we were going to appoint a guy to lead our health department who likes to swim in human feces and do other things. And so,
God.
And we were now going to embark on this, I don't know any other way to call it, but anti-vaccine march of idiocy. And so what I really wanted to do, Dr. Sagg, and first of all, thank you for joining us and spending some time. And I just really wanted to kind of talk to people and get an expert, someone who's worked in this field for your entire life and done and devoted so much time and effort and has such great accomplishments, to explain to people why a lot of this is just craziness. For example, when I hear RFK Jr. say, do you know that these we're giving out 92 vaccines to people, and to children, and some of these things are not effective at all. I've heard other doctors say that's crazy talk. That first of all, we're not at that number. And they are effective as they always have been, and they're not being, pushed upon people by the pharmaceutical companies necessarily. So where do you think some of this comes from, and what do you tell people who come to you with these questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure where it comes from. I think there is a segment of any population, but in our population in the United States for sure, are people who don't trust government, big brother, think there's a sort of a dark state, deep state, and that there's conspiracies abound, that everyone's out to poison humankind. There's not much we can do about that except keep providing information to the folks who get swept into that because of social media and other outlets.
Mm-hmm.
we can come back to social media. We can come back to where do people get information. But let me start by saying that it is a bunch of nonsense, and let me explain why. And it's probably the best thing to do is just review how do vaccines get approved and what does it mean. So we go back to drug development, vaccine development in this case, and a product is proposed. It gets tested initially in animals to look at safety and whether it produces an immune response. And then it transitions to early stages where they test it out in people, including the population at risk, which would include children ultimately. And they look for the right dose, and they're looking for side effects, and they're looking to see whether the immune system responds in a good way. And if that all passes, then they go on to other studies, which larger numbers of people, and they do placebo-controlled studies, which means that some people get the active product, some people get a product that's inert, that doesn't have activity, and they compare safety for sure, whether that vaccine in this case is causing bad side effects, and look for efficacy. Does it work? Does it protect? We hope to find vaccines that work at least 60%. In a lot of the cases of the vaccines we're talking about, like MMR, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, are close to 100% effective. That's like unheard of. But let me go further. After all the testing is done, information's gathered, and they have a critical mass of information, they go to the FDA, just like any drug. And the FDA puts it through its paces, and they're going from the perspective of we're here to protect the public. We're not here to promote a vaccine. We're not here to help a pharmaceutical company make money. In fact, it's almost adversarial between the pharma company and the FDA. And I've been to some of these meetings, and it's not like they're trying to knock them down, but they're really going to hold their feet to the fire. Once it gets approved by the FDA, in the case of a drug, it's released to the general public, and any physician can write, or nurse practitioner, or can write for this medication. And sometimes it's within the label, meaning how it was officially approved. And sometimes it's so-called off-label, where it's being used by the doctor because they think it's going to work. But that all happens in routine drugs. With vaccines, there's an extra layer of review at the CDC by the entity called the ACIP, or the Committee for Immunization Practices. All right. I know several people who used to be on that ACIP, and I can tell you what they do. They go not only into the data that the FDA reviews, they look at all data, complete. And they look at the preclinical, and they look at how the vaccines have been used up to that point. And that review is even more rigorous, and it's not done with the pharmaceutical company present. It's independent, truly independent. And when it goes through its paces, these folks work for a couple of years. As they hear a vaccine is being produced, they start a dossier on every one of those. And so by the time it gets to the committee, these folks have been embroiled in these data for years. And then it gets reviewed, and if it gets approved by the ACIP, then it goes out for use. And if the ACIP gives it its stamp, and this is a critical point, then the government has to pay for the vaccine administration when it gets ACIP approval. So ACIP is a big deal.
Right.
I think I'll stop there and let you follow up, because I've been giving a lecture here.
No. It's all of that is fantastic. One of the things that I did want to touch on is that there's also been, in the wake of COVID and all of the misinformation, and it drives me insane for people to just talk about COVID as though it were almost a hoax and not a million people dying from this deadly virus. But the mRNA vaccines, and you've heard them attacked ad nauseum by RFK, by several other people. Can you explain what an mRNA vaccine is, where it came from? Why is there this distrust all of a sudden in an mRNA vaccine, and should people be fearful of them?
Yeah, so briefly, let's talk about all vaccines. All a vaccine is it produces a protein product. We call it an antigen, but it's basically just a protein. And it presents it to the immune system to prep the immune system should it ever encounter that in case infection that produces those types of proteins. So the immune system's primed and ready to go. Historically, we had live vaccines, think smallpox, think MMR. Those are vaccines that are taking actual viruses that cause those infections and genetically changing them so that they are no longer as virulent. Polio is that way. And so you give it to people, and even there we know that about 1 in 100,000, 1 in a million people will have an actual infection from some of these because the virus can change in a way, but it's a very low risk. The mRNA vaccine is an order of magnitude better for a couple of reasons. One, mRNA, if you remember back to biology freshman year of high school or something, or remember that in the cell, DNA, which is in our nucleus, produces a message. And that message is called mRNA, messenger RNA. So DNA codes and then mRNA comes out. And that's what produces ultimately proteins that all of our body use. So viruses and other bacteria, things that we are interested in protecting folks against, all produce these proteins, and they do it through mRNA. So they found the technology, and this has been worked on for 25 years, and a Nobel Prize went to Drew Weissman for this. They take the mRNA and they cut out a center part of it, and then they shuttle in the fragment of mRNA that they want to code for a specific protein. So it's like it's a shuttle. It's basically a way to kind of make your own protein, designer protein. And so you find the key, like we'll use COVID, you find the key protein you think is the most immunogenic, the one that will cause the most immune system response and protect. And in this case, it's the spike protein. Corona means sun. So the virus looks like a sun that has rays shooting out of it. As you were drawing that on a picture, well, those rays, in this case, the little spikes, are where the virus binds to the lining of the respiratory tract, the nose or the lungs. So the spike protein, they know what it is. They've known what it was from the original SARS infections of 2002 and 3. So they have been working on the concept of a coronavirus, in essence, for the common cold, because it also is a coronavirus. And they take that spike protein, put it in the mRNA, and then they don't need things to help the immune system respond, something called adjuvants. In the case of other protein vaccines, we need to spike, or not, so I won't use that word. We need to entice the immune system to respond better, and those are called adjuvants. And that aluminum, you may think about that with what Kennedy was all upset about because of aluminum in certain vaccines causing problems like autism. That's been debunked. That's not true. There's been 1,000+ studies looking at this in one form or another and has not shown a relationship. But there's no need for an adjuvant with an mRNA vaccine. It's potent enough to get a very robust response. The advantage of the mRNA vaccine is that it's that straightforward, that simple, and we have 1 billion+ people in the world who have received the COVID vaccine. And that's more than most vaccines ever, and especially in such a short period of time. We know what it does, we know that it protects, and we know that it's safe. Full stop. Do people have side effects? Sure, they do. But what we're weighing out here is relative risk. What is the risk of getting COVID when an unvaccinated person versus getting COVID exposure in a vaccinated person? And it's protective. So one final point. Because we can shuttle the mRNA spike protein in and out, as the virus mutates, which we know that it mutates like crazy, it changes. And so soon after we launched in December of 2020, the COVID vaccine, by the summer of 2021, the vaccine had changed dramatically. It had gone from what was called the Alpha variant to the Delta variant. You may remember Delta in that.
Yeah.
It was a terrible time for us. And the vaccine still protected against hospitalization and death, but it did not protect from infection, getting sick in the first place. And so people have sort of gotten confused and said, well, the vaccine doesn't work. I still got COVID. Well, yeah, because it only protects really for about 4 or 5 months against getting infected. and it doesn't protect against getting infected with a new strain. So when they produced the next round of COVID vaccines, they were able to shuttle in a Delta variant, and now we're already up to Omicron variants, and so the current one has one of those. But long-winded answer, sorry, but it's very important for these because these details really matter.
So, Dr. Saag, let me ask you a couple of questions that will probably not really rely so much on your scientific knowledge and just more of your informed observation of how science and politics and culture intersect. My first question is, how do we separate, for those of us who have concerns about big pharma, as we call it, how do we separate the capitalism factor, because it's a business, even with vaccinations, which, and by the way, I took the COVID vaccine, and I was vaccinated as a child. But the reality is we know that there is a capitalistic aspect to this whole thing. It's a business. How do we separate the capitalism from the clinical?
It's a really good question and important. The clinical, I just went through. The capitalism is what drives pharma to be innovative in a way. But I think there's a balance that, in my opinion, we've gotten out of balance. For new drugs, we are charged way too much for medications now. And so the capitalism is a concern, and it's especially a concern when you think that, like the COVID vaccine, a lot of the new drugs that you see for all kinds of things, from immunologic problems to people who get transplants, these monoclonal antibodies things, all that research, not all, but maybe most all of that research was generated by our federal government dollars paying for basic science research at NIH and across the country at places like UAB and other major institutions. That research creates the lead concept that pharma, once it looks like it's going to hit, they pick up and they produce these products in quantities that are then distributable as drugs or vaccines. We need them to do that because the government can't be a pharma company. I mean, you want to live in a more socialistic society, then that could maybe work. Think China or communist. But we chose and we like capitalism, and that's fine. I like it too. But somewhere in there has to be a constraint on how much pharma can charge for a given product, especially when we know that a lot of the lead ideas came from federal government dollars. There should be a way of curtailing it. And to go a little deeper here, for a given drug sold in the United States, we're paying up to 10 times more per unit drug than any other country in the world. We pay for almost all the profit. So there is a reason to pay attention to what pharma is doing. And the reason we do this is because Congress doesn't want to interfere with the free market, which, by the way, it isn't a free market. It's a constrained market. But they don't want to interfere with the capitalistic part. So what we need to do is have some degree of constraint. And the way we can do that is through Medicare, that buys a lot of drugs, have them negotiate that. In the 2000 Medicare revision, where they introduced Medicare Part D, which for drugs, they prohibited the government from negotiating with pharma for lower pricing. They did not allow it. In the last couple of years, they revised that, and now they can. And some of what happened in the last administration was focused on reducing drug prices. You remember the conversations about insulin. But that's the first attempt that we've done that. So people have legitimate concerns about how things are priced and how much money pharma is making. But as you pointed out, that's very different than the science, and it's very different than the clinical side. That is a separate issue.
One other question, Doctor. DeSantis and his insane medical director, or whatever that guy is called.
He's the Surgeon General of Florida.
Surgeon General of Florida, whatever the heck he is. Thanks, Josh.
But insanity is correct. It's the correct adjective, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it seems like to me they're basically trying to kill a percentage of their population with this, with what they're doing now, with as it relates to vaccines. What, in your estimation, is going to happen in Florida? What's the danger to Floridians, and what's the danger to the rest of us because of what they're going to be doing in Florida?
Yeah. They have that adage about people who fail to study history are condemned to repeat it.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a
yeah.
reason that public health laws for vaccination were created, and we're about to rediscover why those laws were created, and it's to protect the general public. It is a nuanced conversation because, on one hand, we believe in freedom and liberty, right? And we on one hand say to parents, you have the right to do for your child what you think is best. However, when a decision made by an individual parent for their child starts to have potential impact on other children who are not part of that decision, then the public health comes in and usually overrules that freedom. Example, seatbelts. We wear seatbelts. There are some parents who hate the fact of putting their kid in a child seat, car seat, for in a car, but they do it because it's the law. Why? Because if an accident happens, we, the public, pay for the injury, okay, through our insurance and other things. So we want to protect the kid. We want to protect ourselves wearing seatbelts. So that's an example. In the case, getting to your question about the Surgeon General, the reason that there are laws about MMR and tetanus and other sort of transmissible infections, diphtheria, whooping cough, those types of things, is because in the case, especially let's just take measles, extraordinarily contagious. If you're around somebody for less than a minute and you're susceptible, you will pick up the measles if you've been in that environment. It's I say a second, I meant a minute. If you're in there for less than a minute, you will pick up measles, and if you're in that same environment. So a child who's unvaccinated, who happens to pick up measles, isn't protected. They start spilling this measles into the environment, and other children who are not vaccinated will pick it up. And that's how you get kind of an explosive epidemic, which we saw in West Texas not too long ago, and we are going to see in Florida if this moves forward the way it is. And so for the people who have chosen not to be vaccinated, they are putting themselves at risk, and then they put the people around them at risk. And that's why those laws are there. To attend public school, you had to be vaccinated. I did, you guys did, and it helped keep us. How many kids did you know growing up who had polio?
Zero.
How many kids growing up did you know who had measles? How many kids did you ever see with tetanus? How many kids did you see with true whooping cough? Like none.
None.
We're going to go back to those days because of a decision like this out of sort of a libertarian perspective. But in a society, we not only protect ourselves, we have to protect our fellow citizens.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for joining us and spreading the good, solid information. And we'll get you back to your normally scheduled daytime job here after this. I said one other thing, and it's really a personal kind of a thing. And because I sit and watch this stuff. I watched a lot of the RFK hearing the other day, and it drives me absolutely bananas. I mean, it infuriates me to hear some of the stuff that takes place. It, my own family members have been caught up in this hysteria of things, and I've honest to God, I've just about come to blows with people at family functions, because it's just I can't wrap my head around it, and so. What I wanted to add is that's me. And I don't know, you talked earlier about ninth grade biology. I just blacked that completely out because I was so terrible at it. But for someone like you who lives this life, who knows about the research, who knows about the work, who see the people every day who go in and do these things, these good people who spent hours and hours of their lives and toiled over this deadly COVID disease that was killing their fellow Americans, and the work that they put into it, and you see what all has transpired over the course of your lifetime and in the work that you've done as well. Is it not endlessly frustrating to you as well? I mean, how do you deal with it?
Sure, it's tough. I think anybody who watched those hearings and listened to RFK's response, just pull yourself back and listen to the questions. Some of them were aggressive, but listen to his response. There was not a single bit of fact that was delivered in his response. He is not an expert. He's not. He's a layperson who happens to be a lawyer. I don't think he ever passed the bar. He's a layperson who's a lawyer who has espoused opinion without much fact, without actually, in a lot of cases, any fact. And he has been put in the position to lead our country's response to health. That includes FDA, that includes CDC, that includes NIH, that includes Medicare, Medicaid, everything. That's the guy who's in charge with no credentials. So it showed. For me, that's one major concern. But on a personal level, the people who have been fired, I know personally, many of them. Jeannie Marazzo, who was here at UAB, was head of NIAID. She was fired. Cliff Lane at NIH, who I worked with for 40 years, fired. I can go on and enumerate several as Dimitri Daskalakis, who just stepped down at CDC after the lead there was fired. I've worked with for 20 years on public health issues. To see these high-quality people getting fired, and by the way, any one of them could have gone into private practice and made probably twice as much as they're paid by a government salary. But they chose to go to public service, just like people choose to go into the military to serve the country. They chose to go into the public health service to serve the country. And they are bona fide experts. So when I see that type of stuff going on, it is infuriating. And I do have deep concerns about what damage is going to be done. Florida is a good example currently, but that's going to spread, and we're just going to suffer the consequences of bad appointments, full stop, bad appointments. And this is what happens when the government goes to politics and prioritizes that over rational science. We're going to suffer.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. And I'm afraid we've already started down that road, given some of the things that we've seen with the measles spread and the whooping cough. And yeah, I don't know. It seems rather bleak. I do think though, something you mentioned, I think we need to do a better job in the media of, and that is of portraying these folks who have done this work as almost heroic, if not heroic, and people who have devoted their lives to a public service. And because I think too often they've been painted as greedy and part of a system that is
bureaucrats.
Bureaucrats. Yeah. And that's unfair to them. And we need to do a better job of making sure that narrative dies a quick death. So, but Dr. Sagg, thank you so much. And I wanted to mention, because you mentioned right before we started that you have your own podcast and it's going antiviral. Where can folks find that?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's on it's a place that I'm sure we can get access to yours and through all the usual podcast outlets. And what it is, it's focusing on infectious diseases and some degree of policy. So anybody can go. It's free. You can just pick it up or go view it on YouTube.
All right. Hey,
awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, when we post this, we'll post a link as well to that and send folks your way. And I know it's going to be on my list from here on out, and I'll get some good info. But thank you, Dr. Sagg. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
All right. Good to see you, Doc.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. We'll come back in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week. Back in a moment. All righty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. Our thanks to our folks at Wind Creek. Our thanks to Dr. Michael Sagg. Man, he's great. Isn't he not great, man?
He is.
I was unaware until he said that about his podcast. I have got to go and find that podcast and listen to that.
I like the title. I like the name too.
Yeah, going antiviral.
Going antiviral. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And also Steven Reed. Steven's also the mayor of Montgomery, just fantastic guest. We will actually, today is, we're recording this thing on Wednesday. We will actually be in the fine city of Montgomery this evening. My family will be. We are going down APR, where I'm sometimes employed. is sponsoring the Biscuits game down there tonight, and so we're going down. My daughter and another woman who works with us, her young boy is they're going to throw out the first pitch at the Biscuits game tonight.
Nice.
I'll let them do that, and yeah, we're going to enjoy the game with some good friends and folks down there. So
cool.
we're looking forward to that. But yeah, thanks to them. Thanks to also the SPLC for their sponsorship as well, and everybody for listening and reviewing this thing. We're gonna get out. I know we've been a while in here, so we're gonna do the right wing nut and bounce. And our right wing nut is RFK Jr. Honestly, man, I get so frustrated watching those hearings, because first of all, Dr. Sagg was right. What his answers on things, there were no facts. It was all belief. When he cited people, that you would come to find out later that the person that he's citing is not a real doctor. Has been one guy he kept quoting was brought up on charges for being a fake doctor. And he's right. But my frustration often comes from the fact that it's so hard for Democrats to nail people down on things. And I thought that really the one who did it best was Bernie Sanders. And Bernie still got it, man. Bernie, he can bring the old man in just indignation and anger better than anybody. I mean, when he started in on him, because he kept pointing out that, so, anytime he got cornered on anything, he always brought up that somebody had taken money from the pharmaceutical industry. All right. And Bernie, so you're telling me that everybody's corrupt but you, and everybody's corrupt but you. That's right. You're the only one who's not corrupt. But he, I thought he nailed him down pretty good, but this is, we laugh and we joke about it, but he's going to kill people. Okay. Let's be clear about this.
Exactly.
He is going to kill people. What he is doing, what they're doing in Florida with DeSantis, and that, you're right, David, that dude, who the hell is that
scary,
guy?
Man.
I mean, my God. And what they're doing is going to kill people. We've already lost people because of some of this anti-vaccine nonsense with the measles outbreaks and the stuff that's killed kids. We've already lost some folks that should not have died because of the stupidity that we have embraced. We have the ability right now, this is what drives me so insane, we have the ability right now to have more information at our fingertips than at any point in our living in the history of the world. We have a supercomputer in our pockets most of the time with our phones. We have Chat GPT and all of these resources where we can just simply hold it up and say, hey, could you explain to me why vaccines might or might not cause autism? And they would cite for you information on for a variety of sources and doctors, and you can go out and search for YouTube podcasts, what like Dr. Michael Saag is giving, where he gives background on all this stuff. And yet we have chosen to be stupid conspiracy theorists over and over and over again, and it is literally killing us.
Yeah, to me, it's tantamount to deciding that we're going to go to our teenage children for healthcare advice. I mean, what do they know? They haven't been to medical school. They haven't done any studies. They haven't had any post-medical school training. They haven't done any residencies. But yet we're going to trust in somebody who's about as informed probably as your average middle schooler or maybe high schooler about health, and we're going to let this guy not only, sort of lead the discourse, we're putting him in charge of the nation's health. I mean, how freaking insane is that? And then he's going to go and say, despite the mountain of medical history, scientific evidence, the prevailing viewpoints of all of the well-established medical institutions and organizations that have been, generally speaking, giving the American people great guidance for decades, all of a sudden, because of one guy, we're saying, oh yeah, all of that is out the window. Really?
Yeah.
It just makes zero sense.
It does. I mean, it only makes sense if you're completely ignorant of these processes and of these people. And for the most part, the American public is completely ignorant of this, and they
Yeah.
believe somehow that these people are part of a conspiracy. And I mean, they don't understand that they're talking of hundreds of people that would have to be part of this conspiracy on things like, for the COVID vaccine, for example. I mean, Dr. Sagg is right. That we've given this thing out to 1 billion people. More than 1 billion people have taken this thing. And you're focused on a handful, I mean, literally a handful of adverse reactions that fall well within the range of the risk that we take on whenever we take any medication, not just vaccines, any medication.
No,
You know how
any
many
medication.
people die every year from Tylenol? It's insane. It's insane, the number. I mean, I don't know, man. It just drives me so absolutely insane every time that I listen to these people and their idiotic excuses for things and the way that they have swayed susceptible people, because they've done the worst. They've done the absolute worst thing is they have taken people's tendency to protect their children and their loved ones, and they have used that as a means to infiltrate their brains with this stupid conspiracy shit. They have told them that these vaccines can harm their children, that it causes autism, that it may affect them for life. It just that nonsense. I mean,
is that your RFK imitation?
Just as it was my throat trying to keep me from speaking like his does. It is the worst, the absolute worst, and I cannot fathom why we are putting up with this, and how people cannot see what's taking place in front of them, and how they don't understand that for years and years and years and years that we have taken these vaccines, that our children have been healthy. We have squashed these things like measles and smallpox and all these other deadly diseases. We don't even know them anymore. That's one of the reasons we don't fear them, is because we don't have any concept of the danger and destruction that they pose for us because of the vaccines that we've been using. And it's just infuriating to watch this shit happen. It's infuriating.
Yeah, that's a great point. The success that medical science has granted our society has also, ironically, made us vulnerable to charlatans and people that are just really, frankly, uninformed. That's kind of a strange irony, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. All right, look, let's get out of here before I get angry about all this. And, maybe go enjoy life while we still got it. All right. Until next week, y'all be safe out there.
Peace.